come a little closer and lend me your ears. Don't worry, you keep yours while I keep mine.
In each episode, we'll dig into the major stories, uncover the truth, and retrieve gems from Yada's blog.
We'll discuss what's right, bark about what's wrong, wag our tails at the thrill of discovery, and take you on adventures through the exciting world we live in today. So, fasten your curiosity leash and get ready.
Right then, coming to you with another episode of the Yada's Vlog on a Blog. Tomorrow's news, disseminated today. Let's dive in.
We're going to talk more about Matsah. Matsah is the ultimate foundational term in developing a relationship with Yahweh. It is called Chog Matsah by Yahweh. It means to celebrate Matzah. Matzah is actually a 7-day celebration that we enjoy once a year. It begins with Passover. Passover is just the first day of Chog Matzah. And God has a great deal to say about it. Christians have, because of Paul, twisted dates and events that they know nothing about. They wouldn't know matzah from a hole in the wall or a hole in their head. But it's the single most important day of the year. And they have attributed these things to Jewish holidays. And while Jews will claim holidays like Passover and Yom Kippur and Sukkoth, they disown all the rest and even celebrate, if you will, the ones that they even acknowledge so incorrectly as to be counterproductive. So they're most certainly not Jewish holidays. They belong to Yahweh. And then we're going to review again what Yahweh had to say about them. He said that they are Moedim. They were restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony designated by appointed meeting times. And he said they are of Yahweh. And their purpose is to show the way to the benefits of the relationship. He said, you are continually and genuinely invited to attend them as set apart mikre invitations to be called out and meet. God is issuing an invitation to all who want to meet with him, who want to be welcomed into his company. You'll either accept these invitations and respond to him, or you will be excluded from his company. He said, these are Moedim. He says, these are not just Moedim, these are my Moedim. It's Moedim Ani. They are my restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony and my meeting times. For 6 days, and this is from Kara, called out, should never have been called, Leviticus 23, 1 and 2. So all the excuses are gone for Christians. The excuses should be gone even for Jews. These are not rabbinical dates. They have nothing to do with Judaism. They have nothing to do with Jews. They are strictly Yahweh's meetings. They are prescribed every year. The one that he's talking about now is Chog Matzah, and it is a 7-day celebration of life, of rendering us not guilty by removing our guilt and adopting us into the covenant family, enriching and empowering us, which is the purpose of these 3 days, celebrated over 7 days. And all of this belongs to Yahweh. God says for 6 days you should act and engage in the service of the spiritual messenger, of the messenger who is speaking by way of the spirit or Ruach of Yahweh and on behalf of his message. And on the 7th day, there will be a Shabbat observance, a Shabbaton, which means all things pertaining to the Sabbath, to remember the promise and the purpose of the set-apart nature. Kodesh means non-religious, non-political nature of this invitation to be called out and to meet with God, Mikra. The spiritual messenger works, the Malaka, doing everything so that you do not have to do anything. And you can view this messenger from heaven as Dod, who had the spirit of Yahweh come upon him, who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, or you can look at this individual as the one who is conveying this message to you about what he has done, since there's only one of each, and both are actually necessary if you're going to know what you need to know and then do what you need to do. It is a Shabbat observance to approach Yahweh, to live and abide throughout time. So if you're not interested in approaching Yahweh, if you think there's a God by another name, if you prefer Jesus Christ or an Allah or a Hashem, then this isn't for you. If you would actually like to meet and be part of the family of the one and only God, Yahweh, then, well, this is the only way to him. If you want to live and abide throughout time with Yahweh and approach him, it is through these Moedim. He says these godly eternal witnesses to the appointed meetings, the Moed, are of Yahweh, and they are set apart. They're invitations to be called out and meet. God has two terms to describe these 7 days each year. They are Moed, and in the plural, Moedim, and Mikra, and in the plural, Mikre. Moed are restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony regarding these appointments, and Mikre are invitations to be called out and meet. Same 7 days, two titles describing them, which to receive the benefits of the relationship, you are invited to attend, to be called out, to be welcomed. Kara, which is the actionable ruse of Mikra. Drawing near through them at the appointed time for the restoring witness. That is Kara, called out. Should never have been called Leviticus 23:4. In the first month, on the 14th of the month, for the purpose of understanding at twilight, that would be at sunset, is Pesach, Passover, according to Yahweh, who ought to know since he is God and he is authoring this message. This leads to, and during the 15th day of this same month, is the festival feast, the Chag, Matsah, of unyeasted bread, to approach Yahweh. Chag Matzah is a festival feast, and it is designated by God on the 15th day of the first month to approach him. 7 days, he said, that you should literally consume matzah, which is bread without the chametz, the embittering fungus of yeast. God's not speaking of baking powder. He is not speaking metaphorically. He is telling you, don't eat bread baked with yeast. Eat bread that has no yeast in it. I'm trying to convey a message to you. Yeast is embittering. It is equivalent to religion and politics. I can't stand these things. They have to be removed for you to approach me. That's the purpose of matzah, is to be disjoined from, severed from, have no contact with, to no longer be stained or stigmatized by the stench of religion or politics. The first, foremost, and primary day exists as a set apart and cleansing invitation to be called out. Yeah, the first day of Chag Matzah is Pesach, Passover, and it is a mikra. It is for you to approach. You shall not consistently perform any of the duties of the spiritual messenger. This is the third time the malaka has been mentioned. Malaka is the feminine of malak. Malak is a masculine noun that means messenger, envoy, somebody who represents God and heaven. And with the A ending, it would be a more inclusive variation of that spiritual messenger. So this is a spiritual messenger that does many things on behalf of those capitalizing on this message. Don't do what that messenger has been assigned to do. They've already done it. Your job now isn't to be crucified as the lamb on Passover. It is not to take guilt into Sheol and deposit it there on Matsah. It is not to empower and enable the children of the covenant as they are adopted into God's family. Nor is it your job to understand how all of this fits together, how all of the pieces convey an important message, and understand who it was that fulfilled this, making it possible for us to enjoy it, because all those things have been done. Listen, learn, and then respond. Now approach and come near to be present with the manifestation of God's fiery light, to be near Yahweh for 7 days. God's not saying to walk through the light or into the light, nor is he telling you that you need to get scorched by the fire. What he is saying is approach, come near. Kara doesn't mean in, it means to draw close, to appear before, to be present with. And Isha is just like Malaka. Ish is the masculine word for fire. With the ending, it makes it more complete. Just like a man might be more physically strong and a woman would be more nurturing, you bring them together and you have a compassionate and strong individual. The same thing is true here. So it is the fullness, if you will, of the fiery light to be near Yahweh for 7 days. And the reason for this is that fire, as I explained in part 1 of our basic presentation of Matzah, is that fire is transformative. It takes decaying organic materials, like our bodies, for example, and transforms them into light and energy, which is what God's going to do with our soul for those who capitalize upon by responding to and by understanding and capitalizing upon Dod's fulfillment in collaboration with Yahweh of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. It says, you shall not do any part of the ministerial responsibilities of who again? The spiritual messenger, the Malaka. God's serious about this. And from his point of view, there are a very limited number of people who he would qualify as a Malaka. Moses was certainly one. He conveyed this message, and he had the spirit of Yahweh upon him. Dod is the most outstanding of them. He had the spirit of Yahweh come upon him, and therefore he is also heaven's messenger. As the Choder, I have 7 spirits of Yahweh who work through me, and which would make me most certainly a spiritual messenger of Yahweh. 2 of those individuals play major roles in fulfilling these mikre, also known as Moedim. Dod fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim. I am responsible for Shabua and Teruah. And then we all return. I'm just a sidekick, but it's the return of Dod and Yahweh on Kippurim, the day of reconciliation, so that we are responsible for that returning remnant of Yisrael come Sukkah. So it's obviously very important that you know who the players are. So let's step back in time to the Yatzah Exodus, freedom from the oppressive crucibles of religious persecution and political oppression. And let's have a better appreciation for how Chag Matzah was celebrated on that first occasion. As the life and death issues associated with Passover were resolved, Yahweh spoke of how celebrating unyeasted bread would restore the relationship. He said, I am Yahweh. The blood will exist for you as a sign. So he is talking about putting the smattering of the blood with a piece of hyssop on the doorway to life while in Mitzrayim, in the first formal celebration of Pesach. So I am Yahweh, he says. He happens to be God. He's not the Lord. He's not Hashem. He's not Jesus. He's not Allah. He is Yahweh. If you don't know his name, you're not using his name, you do not know him. And if you do not know him, this message is not for you. Please turn it off. There's no purpose for you to listen. I am Yahweh. The blood will exist for you, not for you, as a sign, as an oath. When Yahweh first introduced the two Malaka, if you will, as Mayor, in the first chapter of Bereshith, Genesis, he used the term oath, that those two individuals would in fact be willing signs. They will be individuals who willfully fulfill the Moedim. So he's reemphasizing this and drawing your attention back to that. They will exist for you as a sign. On the homes where you are revealing the benefits of the relationship and the name. So when I see the blood, I will observe Passover, providing immunity while protecting you. And so Passover is God's way of saying that if you observe it, I will pass over you as it relates to your demise. You will continue to live. It is the doorway to life. And the corrupting plague, this Negef, Masheth, the debilitating, mortifying, and degrading pandemic disease, which affects and incapacitates through perversions, causing those to be ruined, to stumble and decay. He's really talking about religion, using this as a metaphor for religion. Shall not exist when I strike in the realm of Mitzrayim, in the crucibles of political and religious oppression. So God said, if I see the mark, because you've answered my invitation to celebrate Pesach, Matsah, and Bakorim with me, then I will not strike your home. I will pass over your home so that you will continue to live. As those who are corrupted by politics and religion, they will be stricken all around you. Shemoth, this is means names, should never have been called Exodus 12:13. This specific day will exist on your behalf as a memorial and a reminder of the most memorable of men, Zikaron. Remember, we in the last program we dissected Shabbaton with the own ending. There are a number of words that receive the own ending in Hebrew. When Yahweh introduces Dod for the first time, he says he's all things pertaining to Adam. When we are learning about the importance of this special time of Chag Matzah, we're told that it's a Shabbaton, all things pertaining to the Shabbat. When Dod returns, Yahweh says he'll be Elyon, all things pertaining to Almighty God. Now here it's based on Zakar, which is memorable men. And so it's all things pertaining to the most memorable of men. And you should celebrate a Chag, a festival feast with him to approach Yahweh. So who are you celebrating this with? Who's him? You know? Because if you don't know, you probably shouldn't be celebrating it. Because I don't think there's one in a million. In fact, I know there's not one in a million people who know who him is to approach Yahweh. Now, you can say, and it's a possibility, I have no problem if you were to say, well, him is Yahweh. Okay, it's a little awkward because Yahweh's name, it says with him to approach Yahweh. So it would be with Yahweh to approach him as opposed to Eth-Hu La Yahweh. But you could still make that claim. Or you're going to designate the Zakaron in this case, who is the most memorable man associated with Chag Matzah, with the fulfillment of Pesach. Dod. Absolutely, it's Dod, the man who fulfilled it. Well, God's encouraging you to be smart enough to figure that out. Now, when he said that, the 3,450 years ago, the children of Israel didn't know dough, although they would, because when Moshe had his meltdown, Yahweh introduced him and the children of Israel to Eldad, the Almighty's dode. Right there at that time, he also introduced them to a prophet named Midod, who would be that other fellow that is a Zikaron, who would fulfill and explain these days. And it says, and you should celebrate a festival feast with him to approach Yahweh throughout all of your lives and generations, continuously and genuinely celebrating the festival feast with him as an engraved prescription for living, chukah, something that is clearly communicated and inscribed, literally engraved in stone, of what you should do in life to be cut into the relationship, a chukah. Shemot, the names, should never have been called Exodus 12:14. 7 days you should consistently consume, always, consistently, regularly, habitually be nourished by matzah, bread without yeast. You can call it flat bread, but that misses the point, doesn't it? To become such that you know you can approach Yahweh when the fungus of religion is removed from you. It is, by the way, the derivation of matzah is really quite interesting, because it is from matzahs. You know what matzahs means? To drain out and to remove. So it is a time when yeast is being removed. And God doesn't care about the bread. He cares about your soul. It's being removed from your soul. You don't have yeast in your soul. Oh, well, if you're religious and political, you do. Because from God's point of view, it's religion and political and politics that is the yeast that needs to be drained out and removed. Indeed, on the first and foremost day, you should observe the Shabbat by removing yeast from your homes and from your household. Remove yeast, it's seor, the fungus, culture in food and drink, fermenting as a fermenting agent that leavens. Remove it. You should continue to observe this Shabbat by removing the yeast. Beginning, of course, the first day of Chag Matzah is Passover. Truly, because anyone and everyone who consumes to the point of being defined by having eaten yeasted bread, chametz, bread which includes the fungus of yeast and has become soured, embittered, cruel, and oppressive. What are the most soured, embittered, cruel, and oppressive doctrines in human history? Religion. Religion which are used to empower governments and kings and all manner of clerics and all that they have done. You look at the world, I mean, we're closer maybe to the New World, where the Incas, the Aztecs, and the Mayans were engaged in human sacrifice. They would literally pull out the beating heart of someone. Savage, deadly, embittered, ugly. And virtually every civilization was involved in one way or another in human sacrifice. And even those that didn't make a big spectacle of human sacrifice sacrificed millions of humans and their lust for power and control. So that individual soul who does not do this. So anyone, it says anyone who consumes to the point of being defined by having eaten yeasted bread, that individual soul shall be cut off and separated. Now, shall be karat. This is important for a number of reasons, and we have to be very careful of what it says. They said they'd be cut off and separated from Yisrael, from those who engage and endure with God, from the first and foremost day until the seventh day. All right. So you say, well, I'm not part of Israel anyway, so that doesn't apply to me. Okay. Well, if you're not part of Israel, then the Mikra don't apply to you. Matzah doesn't apply to you. Passover doesn't apply to you. The covenant doesn't apply to you. The Torah doesn't apply to you. None of it applies to you. Heaven doesn't apply to you. God doesn't apply to you. You're either with and supportive of those individuals who engage and endure with God, Yisrael, or you stand apart from God and are an enemy to him and to his people. All of those who are anti-Semites, which is the majority of the world, vast majority of the world today, you all stand apart from God. Not a single one of you will see heaven. Not one. So before you say, well, that doesn't apply to me because I don't want to be part of Israel anyway, that's good. Good riddance. Goodbye. You never will. Now, what it's saying here is if you eat yeasted bread, which Christians do, Muslims do, during the 7 days of Chag Matzah, then that individual soul will be cut off and separated, karat, from Israel. All right. God's saying, I'm not going to kill you. You're going to die, and I'm not going to save you. That's what that means. When you die, that'll be the end of your life. Your soul will dissipate into nothingness. And he was kind enough to tell us that the whole fuss was over souls. Do you think that chametz, yeast, can affect your soul one way or the other? Soul is an entity that exists outside of the framework of the three dimensions that we understand. We can't measure it as a form of energy. We can't weigh it as matter. It exists outside of our frame of reference. And yet every animal has one. And the moment ours is gone, we're dead. Our bodies die the moment our souls leave them. And so God is kind enough here to say, all right, I want you to think this through. What you eat affects your body. But if you don't follow my instructions regarding this, it's going to affect your soul. Now, what you eat has no effect independent of God on your soul. It only affects your soul if you disregard what God says. So this is a very important point here. God's not saying if you eat yeast during the 7 days of Chag Matzah, which Jews do not celebrate Chag Matzah, and Christians most certainly don't celebrate it. Muslims don't celebrate it. Secularists don't celebrate it. So that would be everybody but a very, very, very tiny percentage of the world's population that remove yeast from their diet for the 7 days of Chag Matzah under the auspices of knowing that it is Chag Matzah. And so it's your soul that will pay the price for what your body does. Not because your body has any influence on your soul, but because you chose to ignore God's provision for elongating the life of your soul and expunging that soul of religious and political guilt. So because you retain your political and religious guilt, then you're cut off and separated from Israel. And Israel means individuals who engage and endure with God. It's from Ish, Sarah, El. Karat happens to be the term that serves as the operative verb related to cutting and establishing the covenant, the bereth. The covenant family happens to be the one place that if we accept its 5 conditions, that we are given the benefits that are prescribed here in the first 3, Moed Mikre, eternal life. We are rendered not guilty because our guilt is taken away and deposited in Sheol on Matzah. And then we are adopted into the covenant family, enriched and empowered. And God says in the 89th Mizmor that it was Dod through whom he cut and established that covenant, which means he fulfilled Chag Matzah. And it is for all 7 days. 7 is God's formula. So we have this on very good authority, whether we concur with him or not, whether we accept or reject his approach during Pesach and Matzah, there can be no doubt that these are God's instructions. And Christianity and Judaism are in wholesale violation of them, which means they are not alternative ways to God. They are alternatives to being with God. And he wants us to know that our decisions have consequences. To survive beyond our mortal demise and enjoy eternal life as part of the covenant family, we must capitalize upon Passover and unyeasted bread. These are Yahweh's gifts, albeit brought to us by his son's sacrifice. And considering the price he paid to deliver them and their value to us, to rebuff his generosity engenders a reciprocal response. For those who may protest at this point, saying that the penalty is simply expulsion from a country from which they have no affinity, beware that Yahweh coins names to convey relevant meanings. And as I have shared in this one, it means to be cut off from those who engage and endure with God. That's a very poor life choice. Now, this was not the first time, nor will it be the last, that God will be so direct regarding a departure from a very specific path that he has scribed and described and enabled in the Torah. His first proclamation occurred in the discussion of Pesach. Let me remind you, he said, the individual who himself is clean, but does not exist on the way, when he refrains from and refuses to act upon Pesach, Passover, that soul will be cut off and separated from his or her family. This is because Yahweh's sacrificial offering to approach was not present at the appointed time in accordance with the eternal testimony. That individual and his guilt remain. He retains his guilt and bears it. God provided a means for our guilt to be removed, to be expunged from our souls. That is when Dode, after fulfilling Pesach by sacrificing his disposable body, it being incinerated that night, his soul went into Sheol, carrying our guilt, to deposit it there where it would never be seen before in Sheol, which is equivalent to a black hole and is known as hell. With it gone, we're absolutely good with God. But if you don't capitalize upon Pesach and Matzah, then you're not good with God, and it'll be the end for you. Your choice, but it comes with a consequence. It says that individual will bear his guilt. The only way for your guilt to be removed is for it to be carried into Sheol by Dode on Matzah. You don't celebrate Matzah. You don't understand what Dode did. You don't capitalize upon it. You're not appreciative of this. You don't respond to Yahweh's invitation to benefit in this way. Then you will die with your guilt. And if you die with your guilt, then the dissipation of your soul will be commiserate with your physical death. No penalty, no reward, just gone. The same message now is repeated during Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations, regarding souls not answering the summons to approach the transformative fire that takes our bodies, which are limitations, and transforms them such that they are surrounded by, our soul is surrounded by energy and light. So Yahweh says, because any soul who does not respond to the summons and answer, remember we said God's given you an invitation to meet with him. What's the appropriate thing to do? To respond, to answer that invitation? Well, that Hebrew word is anah. Here it says, if you lo anah, if you do not reply to the call on this corporeal and empowering estem, that means essential, the substantive, the essential, the literal, the backbone of the entity. So if you do not respond, any soul, he's not talking about bodies here. Bodies come and go. It's a tragedy that people are so hung up on bodies that they're not able to see the big picture. But Because any soul, a nephesh, not a body, not a person, a nephesh, any soul who does not respond to the summons and answer on this corporeal and empowering, essential day, these shall be cut off and separated from the family. There is one family, it's called the covenant, and that is what they would be separated from. Kara, called out, should never have been called Leviticus 23:29. So please note that Yahweh did not say that he was going to kill these people. God did not say that he was going to torture anyone in hell either. From his perspective, every soul is free to make their own choices. All Yahweh has said is that when the life of a soul who retains the stench of religion is over, it's over. That soul will perish, ceasing to exist. No penalty, no reward. During the first and foremost day, there is a set-apart invitation to be called out and meet, Kodesh, Mikra. And on the seventh day, there is a unique and special summons for you to approach by reading about the meeting existing for you to approach. Do not do, he says, any of the service of the heavenly representative, the Malaka, whether that you view as Dode now or Yada later, or Dode and Yada. They're the ones imbued with the Ruach, Spirit of Yahweh, that are doing the work for you so that you can benefit. All you need to do is answer the invitation and listen, learn, and respond appropriately. Not too tough. So do not do any of the service of the heavenly representative during them. Get it? Got it? Only that which reveals the benefits of the relationship should be consumed by each individual soul. Souls don't eat, so God is talking about his directions. For you to approach, consistently act and engage alone by oneself as a member of the community. This is an individual invitation. You can dine with your family, but each individual soul is responsible for themselves. So be observant by closely examining and carefully considering those things which are associated with matzah, unyeasted bread. Because indeed, on this essential and foundational day, esteem, structurally vital, substantive day, I descended to serve and brought out your vast assemblage of troubled individuals from the realm of Mitzrayim, the crucibles of political and religious oppression. Therefore, observe these things which are associated with this very specific day throughout all of your generations, your household, and lives. This is an eternal, going back in time and well into the future, inscribed prescription for living, to cut you into this relationship. Shemot names, Exodus 12:17. Did you understand what God just said? He said that if you don't take advantage of this, that your individual soul will suffer the consequence. I'm giving you a path that is easy for you to understand, easy for you to accept, to leave the troubled world of political and religious men and to come into my home. So I want you to consistently engage. Do this. Be responsible. Show some initiative and be observant. Shamar, use your eyes, use your ears, open your mind. Consider this information that is being brought to your attention. Contemplate its implications of everything that is associated with matzah. He didn't say everything that was associated with Pesach, did he? Because Pesach by itself is counterproductive. Matzah is beneficial no matter if you celebrate Pesach or not, but I would always do it as God instructs and celebrate Pesach before Matzah and Bokurim after it. But Matzah is the essential day. It's the day that religious and political guilt are removed from our souls. So be observant. Pay attention to this. Understand that Matzah is the day that is essential. It is absolutely foundational. God says it's a stem, and yet rabbis don't even mention it. It means nothing in Christianity. And therefore, there is no hope for any soul that's involved in either of those two religions. The only hope of a soul living past their mortal life here on earth is to respond to God's invitation to celebrate Matzah as the most essential of days. Observe it, because it's the day that God descended to serve. That's the day that you were brought out. That's the day that you were freed from the crucibles of political and religious oppression. And therefore, Matzah is symbolic of freeing your soul from religious and political oppression. And this was achieved by Dod when he carried our guilt and deposited it into Sheol, hell, which is the equivalent of a black hole, never to be seen again. So God doubles down on this. Observe, observe, observe. Shamar. Shamar does not mean that you must keep. It means that you should look, pay attention, be observant, closely examine, carefully consider the things that are associated with this specific day. Matzah, when the corrupting influence of religion and politics are removed from your soul, and do so forevermore throughout all of your generations and lives. God says this is the eternal inscribed prescription for living, something that has existed back into antiquity and will continue throughout all time. It's chiseled in stone. It's inscribed. It's a prescription for living. It cuts you into the relationship. And just so that you have no chance of missing this, God reinforces his message. In the first month, that would be Abib, time of renewal. On the 14th day, at sundown, you should consistently consume matzah, bread without yeast, bread without the fungus of religion and politics, as an enduring witness until sunset on the 21st day of the month, the 14th to the 21st. The third week of the first month, which is Abib. So we're reminded that Chag Matzah begins on Pesach, and which is the 14th day of Abib, and there is a set-apart mikra on the foremost day of Matzah, which is the 15th day of the first month. Then Chag Matzah includes the celebration of another invitation to be called out and meet on unyeasted bread on the 20th day, this time devoted to removing religious and political corruption from our souls. And during the process, Yahweh asks us to abstain from consuming any more yeast, since the fungus is symbolic of the plague from which the children of Israel were being rescued, political and religious oppression. 7 days, yeast, shawar, the fungus culture, which is soured and fermented from sha'ar to remove which would otherwise remain, should not be found in your homes. because it's not to be found in God's home. That's why he's offering to remove it. And this is for your soul, not your body. Indeed, any soul who consumes to the point of being defined by, this would be a call written and the participle, which is a noun that is very descriptive. Food with yeast. This is chemetz, that which sours, embitters, and grieves, causing oppression, cruelty, and ruthlessness. It is from to ponder the implication of shemetz, to make acerbic and embittered, leading to malice and coercion. The children of Israel were embittered malcreants during the entire time of the Exodus. And during much of that time, they were expressly religious. And so this is what shemetz represents. It's the same thing. The waters of Meribah were all about the children of Israel being embittered, being easily coerced and led to malice against God, acerbic in their nature and personality. And that is what shemetz removes. And so with chemetzet, God is just saying, think about what this represents. Ponder its implications. So indeed, any soul who consumed to the point of being identified food with yeast is at that time cut off and banished of their own doing, karat, from the witnessing community of Yisrael. From those different, including, he says, from those of different ethnicities and communities, and including natives of the land. So if you think this doesn't apply to you because you're not Jewish, well, God says, well, if you don't do this, or if you make a mockery of what I have said, then you're going to be cut off from the covenant. And this includes the ger, the different ethnicities, goyim, if you will, including natives. And actually, Ezrock has many more connotations than that. But it speaks of someone who is deeply rooted, if you will, in what is known to be true. It says, in this case, you won't be rooted in the land. Any food with yeast should not be consistently consumed in any of your assemblies or communities for an indefinite period of time. You should constantly and invariably be nourished by eating unyeasted bread. So how many times does God need to say that? So what do you think the yeast represents that is so embittering? Why is it referred to as a fungus? Why is it the fungus that creates alcohol, which slows our thinking, impairs our judgment? Doesn't religion impair our judgment? Politics certainly impairs one's judgment. Conspiracy does. Patriotism does. All of these things impairs one's judgment, just like alcohol does. And a fungus is something that, if whether man or woman, you suffer from a fungus, oh man, your whole system will go awry. Everything itches and can be irritating, even become a foul stench that is associated with fungus. So God picked an appropriate term. You know, if a woman has a yeast fungus, ooh, terrible, the itching and even the smell. And so God picked a term that was designed to get your attention. That's what needs to be removed. It's the stench and irritating nature and the pervasive nature of religion. Some cases also politics. Drain it out, remove it, is what God is saying here. Well, God wasn't finished talking about this. There's more he had to say. It says the religious And political oppressors were intently resolute with the people, hurriedly sending them out of the region. This is an interesting story here about the first Matsah. I just want to share it with you because I think that even though we're nearing our second hour here, a little more time would probably be illustrative for your basic understanding, if you will, of Matsah. And so he said, for they said, we will all die. Finally, it's time to listen to Yahweh. Let his people go. So the people brought along their dough before it was yeasted, and there was a return of the grievous and cruel oppression. So they didn't want a return of this shemesh, this grievous sorrow and cruel oppression. So the yeast is being associated, shemesh, with oppression. And the oppression they suffered under was religious and political, as well as the economic caste system in Mitzrayim, which is a crucible of human oppression. And so the people left their dough before it was affected by where they had been, a place of cruel oppression. That's what it's associating the yeast with. Having their kneading bowls in their garments and upon their shoulders. This is Shemot Names 12:34. So Yahweh has confirmed what we have come to recognize. By using terem shemesh, we know that before the bread was yeasted was indicative of acting before there was a return of the grievous sorrow and cruel oppression as a result of the embittered fungus permeating the culture of ruthless religion. Shemesh drives to the heart of the issue God has been articulating. The reason that the children of Israel were enslaved by one man is that one man presented himself as a god, and his government was based upon priests establishing his rule for the gods. And he didn't listen to Yahweh because he thought he was a god and didn't know Yahweh as the God. And so this is what was the prevailing nature of Mitzrayim. So Yahweh has nothing against yeast per se. His issue is with shemesh, what it represents through its other connotations: ruthless tyranny and subjugation, cruel behavior. By the way, the most subjugating and ruthless of all human institutions is religion. It's what embitters men towards God. It leads to callous repression, merciless conditions, horrific suffering. Look what the Roman Catholic Church did to Jews. Look what Islam does to Jews. Cynical and delusioned people become defiant and harbor animosity towards God, which in turn leads to cognitive dissonance and emotional anguish. When the covetous people enter the realm of politics and religion, they tend to become tyrants who prosper by lording over others. It is what Mitzrayim represents. It has Sarah in the middle of it, which is to be confined and to be troubled. And that is the purpose of unyeasted bread, to remove that. Similarly revealing, the same three Hebrew consonants can be vocalized: shamash, which means to devise an unjust plot or plan, which leads to the mistreatment of others, plundering them, destroying their land and possessions while terrorizing and killing them without any hint of morality. Sounds like Islam, doesn't it? Mitzrayim indeed. While it was inadequate on its own merit following 8 decades of enslavement, Yahweh gave the captors the opportunity to make reparations, and they did. And so when we benefit from Matsah and our guilt is removed, the symbolism here is that we will be similarly enriched in very tangible ways. That's the purpose of Bikurim. When the children of Israel had engaged in a manner consistent with Moshe's message, they asked the religious despots and political tyrants of Mitzrayim for implements and cooking vessels, silver, objects, and gold, in addition to clothing. Yahweh bestowed and granted for the family a sense of empathy, resulting in a favorable and compassionate disposition in the sight of the religious and political oppressors, such that They let them have what they requested. They were enriched because they trusted God. Therefore, they spared Mitzrayim, the crucibles of religious oppression. They were spared from being utterly destroyed by God because they were of benefit to God's people. One of the very first prophecies in the Torah. So as their journey to the promised land began, we find God saying, and the children of Israel set out for Ramses. And then they went to Sukkoth, which is where all of this is leading. Pesach, Matsah, Bakodim, Shabua, Teruah, and Kippurim lead to Sukkoth, shelters, and our return to the garden, where we are protected and sheltered by God. With approximately 600,000 individuals, 6 being the number of men on foot beside little children. And they baked the dough, which they had brought out of the crucibles of oppression as flat loaves of unyeasted bread, because there was no yeast added, as they had been expelled from Mitzrayim, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, and they would not have prevailed if they had delayed. That is my suggestion to you as well. You don't have much time left. Do not delay. The world's going to get very nasty over these next 7 years. Moreover, they had not done anything to prepare food or provisions for themselves. And it came to pass at the completion of 30 days and 400 years in this one very substantial, essential, and foundational day. It came to be that everyone who was part of the vast assemblage of individuals following their leader, Yahweh, came out from the realm of religious and political persecution and tyranny. Exodus 12:41. It is a night to be alert while holding an evening vigil to approach Yahweh, for them to come out from the land of Mitzrayim and the crucibles of religious oppression. Yes, the night of Matsah is a night to be alert, holding an evening vigil, all to approach Yahweh, and for them to come out and away from religious and political oppression. It is the night to be vigilant, closely examining and considering the means to approach Yahweh. For all of the children who engage and endure with God, and for every generation. We'll conclude with one more section of Yahweh's testimony, and then I think you'll have a fairly robust, basic understanding, if you will, of Matzah. For this reads, then Moshe, which means one who draws out, said to the family, remember, Zakar, this unique day, which to reveal the benefits of the relationship, you were brought out, Yatzah, removed from the realm of the religious and political oppressors, out of the house of slavery, of bondage, by way of and with the resolutely and demonstratively powerful and authoritative, firm and unyielding hand of Yahweh. The reason Yahweh had to be so unyielding and firm at this time is children of Israel didn't know him. They had no prior experience of any kind. And so Yahweh made a promise to Abraham and to us through the covenant of what he was going to do. And God never welches on a promise. So he did what he promised he was going to do. And this is why it took a firm and resolute hand, because the children of Israel came kicking and screaming. Who delivered you, removing you from this. And therefore, do not continue to consume chametz, yeast, the fungus within the culture of man, which sours, irritates, embitters, grieves, and oppresses. This day in the month of Abib, the first month of the spring when barley grain is green and still growing, you came forth and you were removed. And it will be when Yahweh brings you to the land of Canaan, the subdued, which for the benefit of the relationship he promised to your father, to give you a land flowing with milk and honey. Then you should expend considerable energy and intensely serve, doing the work in this month. God is not looking for deadbeats. He is not looking for malcreants. There are so many of you out there that claim to be covenant and do nothing, make no contribution at all. You're easily knocked on your heels. You spend all your time trying to find holes in God's program or everything I have to say. If your work is to try to discredit this message, it is not beneficial. God made it really clear with Adam that if you're not willing to listen, to be thoughtful, to be responsible, and to engage, to be responsive as God pleads with everyone in this process, and then be reliable, he is not going to trust your soul with the empowerment and the enrichment and the enablement of making your soul covenant so that you can be released from this planet and explore the universe. You would do too much damage to yourself, to the universe, and to all of us. So 7 days you should consistently consume unyeasted bread, matzah. And on the seventh day, celebrate a festival feast, a chag, to approach Yahweh. That is the purpose of this day. Matzah, unyeasted bread, should be consumed for 7 days. And there shall not be seen any yeast, any corruptive fungus among you. Eddie's disease, let there not be a fungus among us in any part of your territory. Tell your children about this day, saying, for the sake of the participants who benefit from this occasion, Yahweh engaged to do this for me. When I came out and was removed from the crucibles of oppression, and it shall exist on your behalf as an awe-inspiring sign to guide your hand, your influence, and your actions so that you make a difference. And it represents a zikaron. It conveys the nature of the most memorable of men, a memorial reminder for comprehension between your eyes, for your perspective, for the purpose so that the Torah teaching and guidance of Yahweh exists in your mouth and your speech, from your eyes to your mind, and then out through your mouth. May it all be consistent. May it all be such that your words convey the very Torah teaching of Yahweh. Indeed, because the powerful, strong, and resolute Shazak hand, the uncompromising and unrelenting hand of Yahweh, brought you out, removing and delivering you from the oppressive nature of the religion and politics of Mitzrayim. Something that we can build a foundation of knowledge upon. I don't think we'll have dual programs on many of the topics that we bring up over the next 100 days related to the basics. But this is one that is basic to your very survival, to your understanding of who God is, how he engages in our lives, how he makes a difference so that we can approach him and come to know him. It's a powerful message. One, by the way, we get to celebrate here a week from Friday as we celebrate Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, and the entire week of Chag Matzah and unyeasted bread, removing the stench of religion from our souls, capitalizing on what our King and Messiah, the very Son of God, our Savior, did for us nearly 2,000 years ago. Thank you for listening. Good day.
tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.